Hi, welcome to Love Saranghae with Peter and Andrea. In the next 30 minutes, we'll take you on a journey into the exciting world of entrepreneurship, relationships, and the secrets behind achieving that coveted glow. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. Today, we're going to be exploring Korea, Peter's birth country and the origin of our skincare brands. Korea is a country that has not only set the gold standard for skincare and beauty, but also has been a cultural and economic powerhouse. Today, we will be going back in time and talking a little bit about the history of Korea and how it all relates to what's going on in Korea today. How is the political climate shaping life, business, and skincare trends, both domestically and globally? Let's get started. You ready, Peter?
Yeah, so I am. First of all, Happy New Year to Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone listening to this podcast right now, because when this podcast is released, it will be the new year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's
And right now, today is, as we're recording, December 27th, and the news today is pretty interesting, kind of scary sometimes, coming out of Korea. And so what Andrea and I decided to do was use this opportunity to explore Korea as a country, the history of Korea, because there's a lot of stuff that went in my country that is absolutely crazy when you kind of look into it. And it's a little amusing as well if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines. So we'll talk about that. And we'll start with the fact that I'll give a brief overview of what's going on right now in Korea. And then we'll kind of delve into the history and how it affects us as a Korean skincare company as we go forward. Okay. So right now, today, as of December 27th, there was a news release saying that the second president, the president that is taking over the first, is also being impeached. So his name is Han Duck-soo. He took over for a president 2 weeks ago, whose name was Yoon Suk-yeol. And Yoon Suk-yeol was the guy who came in 2022 as the president of Korea, and he called martial law the beginning of December, which hadn't been called since the 1970s. And for those people don't know what martial law is, it means that the military takes control of the entire country. So you go out at like 11 o'clock at night, go drinking or something, the military police can arrest you and put you in jail with no trial. That's what the martial law means, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And that hasn't happened.
Why are they doing that? Like, what was the reason behind enforcing such a law?
And that's the reason why Yoon Suk-yeol got in trouble. There was no reason to call martial law. And the only reason why he called martial law was because his popularity was going down. And so he used the rule of martial law to try and prolong his political career. And that's why the Korean people were so upset at what happened.
Okay, we already don't like you.
So
now we're going to just kick you out.
Well, so I'll delve into why this is such a problem a little later on. But martial law has been called since the 1970s, when Korea was in its biggest upheaval of its democracy. But what happened was that when he called martial law and the military came in to protect the parliament, the parliamentary members wanted to vote to impeach him or get him out of office. And they had to literally hop fences and like dig tunnels because the military police were not letting them in. And so they had to go. Yeah. So the key was they had to go into the assembly and vote to impeach the president. And they did. Right? So they hopped fences, dug tunnels, they snuck around police barricades to go and vote to impeach the president. And then 2 weeks later, as the vice president came into play, the vice president is now being impeached as well, because he is now putting roadblocks into the investigation and impeachment process of the first president. So it is a giant mess in Korea right now. It is a political upheaval. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's not the first time this has happened. That's the funny thing. And that's the history of Korea.
You know what, though? I find it really awesome, the spirit of the people. Like, if that were to happen in Canada, I feel like it would take a lot longer. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here in Canada, and there's a very divided political sort of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Groups.
I agree.
Groups of people who are very strong in their belief. But in Korea, it sounds like they're very united.
Yes.
And they really mobilize to what needs to happen for the greater good of the society.
Yeah, that's because this has happened so many times. It is ingrained in the culture to fight. Because if you don't, dictators will usurp. So a couple of things. Number one is that when Yoon Suk-yeol, the last president that came in 2022, was elected, he was elected on the platform of anti-feminism. So what happened was he promised the country to roll back a lot of the progress that happened with the feminist movement. Because Korea still this day has the largest pay gap between men and women. It also it doesn't protect a lot of the women in the workforce, the rights, like things like sexual harassment in the workplace, things like maternity leave. It's a third world country still when it comes to women's rights. And for the last 30 years,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for the last 30 years, women have been slowly and steadily getting rights. But this president was basically got elected on the anti-feminist movement. So when Yoon Suk-yeol was waiting to get impeached, or he made this terrible mistake, and it was a mistake, the women of the country mobilized. And so there were millions of people on the street with these K-pop bands, glow sticks, and they were waving it around to let people know that they weren't going to have this. Millions of women. So
leave it to women to change the world.
So this particular, and to be honest, what people are calling is that Korea could be the lightning point for the tide to turn against the misogyny and all the, all of the rhetoric that's going on today with anti-feminism, I guess, and pro-masculinity. The whole tide may be turning as the lightning point could be Korea. That's the first president to fall under this other momentum coming up, right? But the second thing is this is not the Korean people are mobilizing because the Korean history is full of dictators wanting power for decades on end.
You keep saying that. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of background? Like, how is Korea's what are some of the historical challenges and triumphs that shaped Korea's identity? Like, how did we get here?
So I'll give a brief history of Korea itself, because I think there are some people out there who are interested in how the country formed. My son, he's interested like crazy in this thing, so he always asks. And then I'll kind of delve into the good points and the bad points of Korea today. So Korea was not a nation until about the 13th century. So before the 13th century, it was a collection of three nations. So Goguryeo, Silla, Baekje. Goguryeo is the top, and Silla, Baekje makes up the southern part of Korea today, right? So right around, the 13th century. About the 9th century, a country called Goryeo was formed. And then in the 13th century, Joseon was formed. So the first king of Joseon, that's the modern Korea as we know it. First king of Joseon was the one that created the Hangul, or the Korean language. Okay, so Joseon as a country, including North Korea at the time. So Korea went all the way from the south, which is Busan, and Jeju-do, all the way up to the north, which is now North Korea. So this is one country, right? And Joseon existed until about the 1900s, just like late 1800s, early 1900s, when it was annexed by Japan. So Japan invaded Korea. So Japan, throughout history, has always wanted to invade Korea as a landing point to invade China. Right? The goal was always to go to China, and Korea was a great landing point because it was the closest landmass to Japan, and it was attached to China. So you can actually move troops, and you can move food and all that stuff through Korea. That's why they wanted it. It was a strategic military landing point. But they failed over and over and over again. And there was a general named Lee Sun-shin who invented the turtle submarine, who is very famous in Korea, considered one of the greatest admirals in the world from a naval perspective. So Korea fought Japan off for a long, long time. But in late 1800s, Japan finally annexed Korea. And for about 40 years, they occupied Korea. And that's why today, a lot of Koreans are still in Japan, and a lot of Japanese are still in Korea, right? Because there's a lot of movement. And in fact, a lot of Korean food is a combination of native Korean food plus a lot of Japanese food.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Chinese food. Yeah, it's a mixing pot.
Like a fusion now.
Exactly. The reason why Korea has such a bad relationship with Japan today was because of that.
Do they have a bad relationship?
Yeah.
Like Koreans and Japanese typically like not alibis, enemies? Like, do they see each other as like the enemy?
So from a political and economic perspective, no. I think money wins in this case, right? Like,
Okay.
where there's money to be made, people will set aside political differences and make money. But the general population of Korea, especially the older generation,
Yeah.
still treat the Japanese as enemies. Like, it's not something that they like. So
So,
you know,
your Korean elder would not be happy if their daughter or granddaughter married a Japanese boy.
yeah, so a grandparent would definitely not be happy. A parent would, depending upon what the situation is, probably wouldn't mind as much as a grandparent because the hatred is not so deeply embedded.
Yeah.
But the modern Koreans, it's all about economic and global movement now.
Status
It's like,
and movement.
yeah, it's really just about, how they can move through the world for the betterment of themselves. And if Japan helps them that way, great. There's lots of people that now live in Korea, live in Japan, come back to live in Korea. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
In Japanese cars, Toyota is number one in the world, and Toyota is everywhere in Korea. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad anymore, right?
Okay,
But that's the
well,
history.
right.
Of
At
it.
least we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
People are, I guess, moving forward. And the further removed you are from it, the less impact it has on you. Like,
That's right. That's right.
So,
And we're very open to Japanese skincare as well here, and we're open to that culture.
So based on the history that we know, and the little bit of history, and then what's going on politically now?
Yeah. So let me just finish that. When World War II finished and Japan had to rescind all their territories, this was the key moment. Russia took over the north, and the U.S. took over the south. That is what happened with North and South Korea.
Okay.
Yeah. So after World War II, when Japan was pushed back, Russia took over the north and instilled communism, and U.S. took over the south and instilled democracy, the U.S. way of living or politics, right? In about late 1940s, North Korea, with the help of Russia and China, invaded South Korea.
Oh.
That was the Korean War. And the U.S. came to help, pushed back the north, and there was a seesawing, and they basically had an armistice at the 38th parallel. So Korea is still,
What does that mean?
they're still technically at war.
Oh.
There has been no peace treaty. They just don't advance on each other. So it's called an armistice, not a peace treaty. Yeah, that's why there's still border guards. There's still wires and bombs and mines still in the middle of between North and South. Yes. And if
I don't want to go anymore.
So I'll tell you a little story. So if a North Korean soldier is trying to get to the South to defect, he will be shot on sight. Any soldier trying to defect, I think South Korea as well. Any soldier trying, or any person trying to go from south to north or north to south, they will be shot on sight. That's the rule.
Well, is there no legal way of doing that?
There's no legal. Oh, I mean, there was some legal way of doing it before. There's a town in the middle of between south and north. It's an economic free trade zone where north and south come together to work on something. But that's been kind of kiboshed a little bit. Yeah. So there's not really much to do. Yeah.
So you can never go
No.
north to south.
No, I have to get permission.
No commuting. Or
No, I have to get permission. Yeah, I have to go. And in fact, as a South Korean by birth, it's very dangerous for me to go. If I was a gaijin, if I was like, you, or if I look like a blonde hair, blue eye, it'd be much easier for me to go and get out. As a South Korean, I could be arrested for treason or spying. Absolutely. Yep. And it has happened. Right. So the first president, his name was Park Chung-hee of South Korea. He was assassinated. And he was assassinated and taken over by another president. And then he was usurped by a guy named Chun Do-han. And he basically ruled with an iron fist, killed a lot of civilians to maintain power for about, I would say, 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's the history. That's the political strife of Korea. So people have been killed a lot of assassinations. There's a lot of turmoil going on. And the Korean people don't want to go back to that, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah. Because
They've come so far.
So we sit here today now on the cusp of this upheaval now with some idiot buffoon who wants to stay in office. And we know many people who are like that, who are willing to break the peace and the progress we've made to date just to keep his seat at the political table. And so that's what's going on in Korea right now. And everybody's talking about it in Korea, and they don't know what's going to happen.
So what does that mean now for the country's economy, for like the beauty and skincare industry? Like, how does that impact us?
Yeah. So the immediate impact is that on the markets, the Korean won has dropped against the US dollar.
Oh,
right? Yeah. So from an economic perspective, the won has really dropped, and they're anticipating obviously political and economic turmoil against the US dollar, so instability in the economy. From a day-to-day perspective for us and for anybody else doing business in Korea, for example, Hyundai, the third largest automotive manufacturer, is Korean. Kia, the seventh largest automotive manufacturer, is Korean. Samsung, LG, they're all Korean companies that do international business. The Korean won aside, the value dropping aside, it's business as usual for now.
Yeah.
Right? There's the border might be a little bit more difficult to get in and out of. There's got to be some turmoil there, and I think there's going to be a lot more military presence in areas. But I think from an economic perspective, they want the businesses to flow, right? So for us, I think it's business as usual. Things might take longer.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing that I can say right now.
As if we want that. It already takes forever.
It already takes forever. It already takes forever, yeah. So
bring things into market. So for us, that means we need to be better prepared and organized. So we are placing our orders well in advance. We're anticipating our sales, and we are acting quickly so that we are not in a situation of sold out for too long.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, I don't know. That's a lot. So if we're looking for entrepreneurs like us abroad, what lessons can we take from these changes to better align our businesses with global trends?
Well, we are a Korean skincare company, and there are various reasons why that's the case. That's the root of our formulation and the root of where we come from.
And it's the best.
And it's the best. Again, various reasons, the quality and innovation being the primary reason. So we can't simply, I think it's difficult for us to simply say, because of political turmoil, we're going to have to look at formulation from other countries, et cetera, because that goes against the pure DNA of who we are.
Yeah.
So until that point, we're just going to have to, I think we're going to have to stay true to our Korean roots. Having said that, I think this is a great time for us to start consider, do we now evolve into a skincare company with Korean heritage and inspired by Korea? That means we use facilities, manufacturing facilities and partners in US, Italy, Japan, Germany. If the quality is better or as good, if we can get something, innovation that we can't get anywhere else, do we go to those countries? I think the answer might be yes on that point.
Yeah, I'm a little resistant to that, because I think so far, especially from being in Hong Kong, I still feel like Korea is still the leader in beauty and innovation and wellness and all of that. But with the existing political situation and what is going on, we do have to be open to other options, and we do have to explore those options to ensure that our business continues to grow and we continue to be able to serve our customers in the best ways possible.
Well, for our customers who don't know right now, 2 of our products actually are made in the U.S.
Yeah.
So even though we are Korean skincare, we have made the decision to manufacture and distribute 2 products made in the U.S. The first is the sunscreen, our SPF 50 sunscreen, because, and Andrea, what you want to tell our customers why we chose U.S. as the basis for SPF 50 instead of Korea?
Yeah, we chose it because it's better. The zinc oxide in Korea, they're known for chemical sunscreen. And we don't want to be using chemical sunscreen because it is absorbed into the bloodstream. What we want is something to sit on top of the skin and protect. And that is the difference between mineral and chemical sunscreen, one of the differences. So the U.S. truthfully makes it better ingredients, cleaner ingredients, and they're very comfortable manipulating those ingredients for our purposes. So that's why we decided to make that call.
Well, what happened was we went to partners in Korea and they did not know how to use pure zinc oxide as a SPF filter. They just didn't have the capacity for it. So they were all using avobenzone and chemical filters. And when we asked them to co-create an SPF 50, they were willing to do like SPF 15, but 50 they just didn't have the technology apparently or the know-how to make it sheer enough so that the skin absorbs and it doesn't leave a white streak, right? So we're looking for the most sheer possible with an SPF physical mineral sunscreen, and they couldn't do it. So we had to go around all over the world, and lo and behold, the US had a partner that said, hey, we can do this. So that's what happened. And the second product is the premium marine collagen.
The marine collagen powder that we use in our smoothies and in Peter's coffee right now is also made in the US. And the main reason for that is because of FDA regulations. So we were not able, it would have created a lot of extra work for us to apply to bring in a product like that that is ingested. So we decided to simplify where we can.
So the other thing too is that, believe it or not, and I was actually shocked at this, in terms of ingestible supplements, Korea is behind US.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So I'm not saying that Korea's regulations are stiffer. They are. Korea, Australia, Canada, EU, their own FDA, like they ban more chemicals and compounds than the US.
Yeah.
But if you know what you're doing, if you know the ingredients that you want to use, you know what you're doing, the blending, processing of nutritional supplements, because the industry here in the US the nutritional supplement industry is very mature in the US, and it's been, it's been 70 years, right? Korea doesn't have a supplement mentality. They're a lot about like ginseng and like teas.
It's changing though. And
it is changing.
That when we go in the fall.
It is changing.
I do think it's changing. They're catching up. And if it's anything like the past, Korea will be far ahead.
Yeah.
In no time. But yes, they are still behind the US.
Yeah, they're catching up, but the US has a more mature cycle at handling and processing supplements. So for now, we'll see what happens in the future.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I guess the last really thought that we have is what Peter and I talk about often is how can we continue to advocate for self-care, align with Korea's evolving landscape, and continue to ensure the quality that we give and sustainability that is important to our brand. How can we continue our meaningful work in light of all that's going on in Korea? So that's something that Peter and I talk about often. And we talk about this as a team because even through political turmoil and unrest, we still want to continue to do what we do in bringing you the best skincare. So what do you think, Peter? What are some ways that we can stay focused on our goal and on our mission, rather, to continue to bring the best products to our people?
I think slowly and surely we are starting to get borderless. So whether it comes from Canada, Korea, Japan, Germany, France, it doesn't really matter. I think we need to look at bringing quality skincare, quality ingredients from any partner that we can find around the world. And we are starting to do that. Cosmoprof in Hong Kong was one of those steps. We're talking to everybody, but no matter what country that they originate from. I think you can't put all your eggs in one basket either. So we work with 4 partners, manufacturing partners in Korea right now. And every 2 or 3 years, one of them drops off, and maybe another new one comes online. So we're always continuously working with new people and I guess not working with some of the others just by natural progression of who's better. We're always looking for who's better. And that's it. That's what we're going to have to do going forward because I can't predict, what political turmoil is going to create for us, Korea otherwise, or even Canada or US with the tariffs coming online. Is that going to affect us? I don't know. So these are things that we have to talk about. And our customers, hopefully, if we do our job correctly, then our customers will not see the effect of what's going on with the world. Yeah. However, the history of Korea is interesting because we are Korean, or at least the DNA of the company is Korean. I'm Korean.
Yeah.
And world history and human history fascinate me. So
Yeah.
I think some people might be a little more, they might not like the fact that we're talking about some country history, but
Politicals.
yeah.
Been a fun man.
And I'm not going into politics.
Skincare.
I'm not going to politics of Canada, US, and what's going to happen with that.
We have not.
What's good or bad. We're just talking about the history. But I think some of you might find this very interesting and maybe even go deeper into how Korea is such a small nation of 40 million people stuck between China, a population of 1.7 billion, and Japan, a population of 120 million, a global powerhouse, how we have survived all these years to become a nation today.
I would say you didn't just survive, you thrived. Like you went from a third world country to a first world country in like 40 years. Like,
well, I mean, okay, this is a really good conclusion to Korea, and then we'll leave it off here. Korea is so let me give you a story. So in the 1980s, Korea was still a third world country and borrowed a lot of money from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, right? Korea is the only country in history to have paid off the entire loan before the maturation date. So they borrowed the money from the IMF and paid the whole entire thing off before it was due. And how they did it was every citizen of Korea said, it is our duty to pay this loan. And so they donated all their jewelry, their gold, their diamonds, whatever, melted it down, gave it to the government. All the citizens bound together to give their own money to the government to pay off the government loan, the International Monetary Fund. That's the kind of people the Koreans are, right? Yeah. So they're very resilient. And the situation that we have today is by design. It's not like by accident Korea became a first world country. They planned all of this from the beginning. There's actually a book called The Birth of Korean Cool. If anybody is interested, go pick up this book. And it kind of outlines how Korea decided when they wanted to export something, they decided to export culture, not manufacturing capacity, not microwaves or food products. They said, we're going to export culture. And that's why we have K-pop, we have K-drama, we have skincare.
all over the world.
Yeah, because...
And it's a favorite. Like, if you think of K-drama, I remember watching my first K-drama with you. I was so hooked. And I sometimes avoid it now because once I start a show, I have to watch the whole thing.
Well, for those of you who don't know yet, Squid Game Season 2 has just come out on December 26th. So, I mean, that was the most watched Netflix series ever. Yeah. So the Season 2 is out. I'm going to go watch it for sure.
I know.
Okay. I think that's enough for history. It's been fantastic and fun talking about my home country. I hope I can do something like this again.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you have more questions about Korea, Korean skincare, anything related to what we talked about today, either email us or send us a DM at Aurora Skin. Until next time. Thanks for listening to Love Saranghae with us, Peter and Andrea. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our show. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and share this podcast with someone you think would love it. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and love the world.